Hello, everybody. It's great to be here again today. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, and Eva.ai, an HR company, AI HR tech company. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. Today, I'm actually dialing in from coast to Stanford University. I'm out here in Palo Alto as we speak. Today, GSD has 160 companies from 59 countries around the world. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend Harsh. Harsh is a serial entrepreneur and investor. We're going to talk about go-to-market strategies for 24, 25, and beyond. So with that, he's dialing in, I believe, from India. Thanks. Hey,
Hey
Harsh, how are
Gary,
you today?
doing great. Glad to be back and glad to speak to you again.
So last time I spoke to you is about 2 years ago. My, oh my, has the world changed?
Oh, definitely. Things are moving really fast over the last 2 years. Chat GPT was just starting out then, and look at where it is today.
It's funny because in 2020, I wrote one of the early articles on ChatGPT, GPT-3, and people said, oh, this is never going to happen. It was July 21st, 2020. And they said, it's not going to happen. This is just science fiction. I said, it's going to happen. It's going to change everything. And, people, it was funny. They were taking a kind of a hands-off approach. Now everybody embraces it. It's very, very interesting, you know. And I
Yes.
know with you, you're right on the leading edge. So tell me what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting things. I was head of marketing for a couple of companies, $10 million a year companies. I was heading marketing for them for the last 1 or 2 years. Then I was the head of startups for World Trade Center, Pune. So what we would do is, help Indian startups expand nationally, right? So a lot of Indian companies which were there, they were unable to expand nationally. We were helping that, facilitating that, and I actually introduced you to a couple of companies as well, if you remember. So we did that as well. So then I've kind of left that. I've started my own company called GTM Ventures. The original idea for GTM Ventures was, to organize demo days for startups where they could raise funds, connect with VCs, etc. But now we've pivoted that slightly because I noticed that fundraising is not the real problem for businesses. The real problem is GTM actually getting the revenues, and that's what I plan to do with GTM Ventures. Help them with their go-to-market, help them with actual revenue generation, rather than simply being a fundraising facilitator. So that's what I've been up to.
No, that's great. So, what's happening in India right now? What's growth look like of those companies, and how are they going to go global?
So essentially, what is happening in India is a lot of mature stage companies at Series B, C funding has kind of dried up a little, but the early stage, seed stage, pre-Series A, Series A, that's going phenomenally well. So what is happening is good startups. There's been a market correction ever since 2021. I'm sure US has gone through the same right now. So because of that, we are seeing a lot of good companies, and most importantly, VCs have started kind of pressurizing the startups to get their business sorted, right? Get their shit sorted in terms of getting the revenues, getting the GTM going. So essentially, what is happening is we are helping Indian companies, particularly tech and SaaS companies, right? They can expand to US very easily. That's what we're trying to help them out with, right? Help them with the SDR setup, help them with the sales systems, the lead gen systems, the entire ecosystem is required. Provide them with that so that they can set up their shop over there quite easily, before they get into full-time hires, which can be really expensive. So we are kind of acting like a bridge between that.
No, that's great. And if you look at it right now, you said the funding levels are down for the B2C companies. Why is that? Why are funding levels up for the early stage, and why are they slowed down for the B2C?
So what is happening is a lot of early stage startups, when they get the early stage funding, right, they don't get the PMF right at the right point of time, or they just end up spending too much in the early stages, right? Because of that, in order to qualify for the Series B and C stage, you need to have certain revenue milestones, and they're not able to reach that stage. So that's why, because of that, they're unable to negotiate good valuations at that point of time. So that is the biggest hiccup which they are facing. So that is why even the early stage investors which were there, they were not getting exits very easily. That's why the secondary market is heating up a lot over here in India, where we are working with a few family offices and few other agents, to help facilitate secondary, so that they at least get the early stage investors who got in early, they get an exit, and that fuel can get pumped back into the early stage ecosystem.
It's interesting because since we last talked, I've been working with a lot of top tier family offices worldwide. And one of the things that I hear across the board, and many of them are friends of mine, many of them are acquaintances of mine, but they tell me that they're looking for these generative AI opportunities that are the right stuff, that are real, because there's a lot of BS out there, and they're trying to find those companies because what they say is that, as we look forward to the future, if you don't have some type of a generative AI component, your businesses and legacy businesses probably aren't going to be competitive. And one of the things sometimes we forget is 99% of the wealth is held by 1% of the population.
True. Oh, definitely. So you won't believe I recently spoke to $100 million revenue company, and that's exactly the challenge that they're facing right now, right? So they're doing $100 million a year in revenue, but typically very old school business, right? And as expected, they aren't growing as much, 5 to 10% a year on year growth, right? So that's why the next generation they are really looking forward to find these new age opportunities, either in the form of a family office which they can set up, or set up their own investment arm to kind of which are allies to their existing business, so that can then kind of prop up growth over the next 3 to 5 years before they can go public.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I see these companies. It's funny because if you look at, there's really three things, Harsh, that are important, right, for a company: is operational expertise, network and contacts, and access to capital. And if you have those three things in a flexible, resilient team, you can make any company a unicorn. I mean, take for example, Facebook, right? There was a MySpace and Friendster. Mark Zuckerberg comes out from the summer from Harvard and brings it out here. Then Peter Thiel gets involved. All of a sudden, you got a great cheerleader from Silicon Valley. Then you get uh, you get people like Yuri Milner and of multifamily offices involved, and all the company all of a sudden is one of the hottest companies in the world. But I see that happening on and over again because the same people are investing in those companies and they become the cheerleaders behind the scenes, and they call their buddies up and say, "Hey, take a look at this company. It's pretty interesting. Do you want to get into it?"
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely phenomenal in terms of how that's happening, right? So even if you look at, you mentioned Peter Thiel, right? One of his very interesting quotes, which he used to mention, is, "I don't like the companies who are first in the market. I want the companies which are going to be the last in the market." And by what he means is the companies which enter the last, essentially they become the category creators, right? Which is what Facebook was. And after that, he's present. Essentially, they've dominated the social media space. So that's what typically we are looking at, right? We're trying to create an ecosystem of not just VCs but also GTM partners across the world. So what we can do is, if someone wants to set up, say, shop in US, or say in UK, or say in Canada, we can simply bridge those dots, connect them, and get them facilitated. So that's exactly what we are planning, not just on this front, but also on the M&A front as well. So right now the M&A space is heating up in India as well, as I already know it's happening in the US as well. So a lot of interesting things are happening along that front. That's why we are creating a syndicate of a lot of local bankers.
Well, tell
So
us
that
a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit about the M&A funds. What's really happening right now?
So essentially, what is happening is a lot of small businesses, especially since COVID, they're shutting down left, right, and center, right? So because of that, what's happening is the larger companies,
And
they
why
are
are they shutting down, though, Harsh? Why is it they're shutting down?
because of the revenue growth, right? The revenue growth is not there, and most of these businesses, if you actually look at it, the inflation is particularly sky high, especially in India, right? 7 to 8% are the official numbers, and if the revenues are not going proportionately, and the wages have gone up crazily ever since after 2021, 2022. So because of that, the businesses are feeling tremendous financial stress. And the number one criteria which I say to any business is, if you're not growing by 15 to 20% year on year, at least in India, you're essentially, you're dying.
Yeah.
Unlike the US, where 5 to 10% is considered good, in India you need to be at least 15 to 20%. And if you're not growing by that much, you might as well take an exit, get out, and do something new where you can get that growth potential. So that's what a lot of things are happening right now on that front, and a lot of those are distressed deals as well. So distressed deals, as you already know, they you get them at very dirt cheap prices. So a lot of that is happening as well.
No, but again, I see one of my companies is raising $150 million right now. Their last round was 24.8. So I see those companies taking off like crazy. So on one side of it, we've got the dire news, but again, you go back to access to capital, networking contacts, and operational expertise, and any one of those companies out there. I mean, look at it, Harsh. You look at a typical VC, they're 24 to 33-year-old. They never build a company, only about 10%, but they're trying to tell you how to do it using a financial model. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. You wouldn't go to a cardiologist and somebody says, listen, I'm an obstetrician, but let me operate in your heart. It's crazy. So,
Yep, absolutely.
the paradigm needs to change. In fact, the way they get a 2 and 20, they get this management fee and they get a percent. But the situation is, if you really incentivize people for that, what are they going to do? The more companies, the better, right? My opinion, right? So we got to do a more surgical, non shotgun approach to this thing. Use laser precision to go after these folks, and you can change things. But you got to find the right kind of team. It's not everybody that's going to want to be a startup, right? It's not everybody's going to be flexible. They talk about it, right? They like going to have coffee, going to the co-working space, playing chess, having fun, talking about Minecraft or whatever, but in reality, it's if you want to do it, it's really important to get inside of the network because speed is critically important to this. It's not about wasting time and wasting money. It's about how fast can we get to it, like anything else. You want to win the race. You want to get your Ferrari out of the garage. It's not about keeping it in the garage so that it's there. It's about getting it out and driving it in the neighborhood and then winning Formula One. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, what's the prognosis 24 to 25? How's it going to change the go to market strategies?
So essentially, where I see this going is, as you pointed out in your first point over there, that the market has become extremely polarized, right? So there's a huge number of businesses which are dying right now, which they probably shut down forever. At the same time, because of that, what's happening is the VCs are becoming very selective, but they have a lot of dry powder in place, right? So when they find a good potential thing, you know, they kind of do an overdose over there, and there's an overdose of capital to those kind of companies which are like good. Because of that, sometimes what happens is a lot of money goes over there and they don't feel that kind of pinch which the rest of the market is feeling. But because of that, it kind of distorts the entire market economics and makes the GTM very expensive. Because what tends to happen is we have these very few companies which have an excess load of cash, and most of the companies who are struggling for cash. Because of that, these companies, the companies flush with cash, they are willing to invest a lot, hire the best talent at the most expensive prices, hire the best marketing agencies, hire the best agencies. So because of that, the good marketing agencies, they only want to work with the best companies. Then they don't want to work with the rest of the companies. So that creates a huge friction, or not just in terms of finding the right marketing agencies, but also in terms of the right hiring. So that creates a huge distortion in the market. So you have a very small percentage who get the pick of the people they want, the pick of the agencies that they want, and majority struggling over there. That's kind of where we kind of come in, where we offer facilitate to the people who don't have that funding and get them those strategic resources. More importantly, open up the lead gen channels for them, because we kind of do it as we do it a very small fees upfront. Primarily, we make money on the back end. So because of that, they're happy with that, that they don't have to pay that much upfront, and we get most of the money on the back end. So believe it or not, we actually end up making more than catering to that premium audience. So something along those lines is what we're happening, and especially with the use of AI right now, is essentially going to kill the VA industry, and that's kind of what I've been doing with a few other companies as well.
It's going to
We've
kill what industry? Say that one more
the
time.
VA, the VA virtual assistant industry.
Hmm.
So what we've done is we've created this AI-based SDRs, particularly useful for international markets like US, UK, Canada, Australia. So what these AI-based SDRs do is typically, you might be knowing, right? So when we have like thousands of leads, the sales guys in your team, they will only want to focus on the hot ones or maybe the warm ones. They'll ignore the cold ones which are inactive, right? What we do is we set up an automated follow-up system, which earlier used to be done through email. We do it through SMS, number one. And number two, we integrate AI conversation into that. So because of that, it feels extremely natural and extremely organic and extremely fluid. So that's why the leads which were originally dead, they again become active, they become warm, which are then added into the pipeline of the sales guys. So that does a lot of good churning which is going on over there, and we are seeing some tremendous results coming on through that.
Yeah, no, the situation with these virtual assistants. I wrote an article actually last week. By the way, I've written 440 articles since over the last pre GPT. You got to say that because now everybody can write. But
Yeah,
I wrote
correct.
an article about. I said if we look at Carl Rogers, who was a humanistic psychologist, and B.F. Skinner, who was an operant conditioning psychologist, We combine their two theories and we apply it to artificial intelligence, having them empathy and compassion of Rogers and unconditional positive regard. And we tokenize goodness and we put this into these VA virtual assistant models where we're going down through and have these hyper intelligent agents. We can create a more human like experience. And I mean, that's what we're missing, right? I mean, if you look at the models today, they're very pragmatic. And if we look at humans, we're not pragmatic. And if somebody takes a pragmatic approach to who we are, nothing good's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So we better come up with these, kind of like your grandmother. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but my grandmother, I always used to go to her place and she'd be cooking pies and cookies and take me for walks. And, I remember one time she bought me a bicycle, didn't tell my grandfather, my dad. She bought me a really nice bike that I always wanted. I was so happy. Um, but those kind of things need to happen in these AI tools, right? To be able to bring the human experience to it. What do you think about that?
Definitely, that's extremely important. Obviously, firstly, to kind of mitigate the risk, right? Because the number one challenge which I face, I believe, which people are facing is people are relying so much on AI at this point of time to do day-to-day tasks that is kind of dumbing down the mass audiences. And because of that, what's happening is because of the over reliance of AI, and people stop using their own brain and start using that. We need to get that empathy element involved over there very soon, because we are going to be seeing a significant drop down in the IQ of the masses. So that's going to be number one. Number two is obviously the risks
You're going
associated
to
with
see a
that one,
drop in the IQ of the masses because of what?
because people are over reliant on AI to perform regular tasks, right? So what's happening is when you tell in today's day and age, you ask a marketing agency, that I want to write a couple of emails, right? No one will do it by themselves. They'll simply put it into Chat
But I
GPT.
mean, you got we're forgetting the other side of it, Harsh. I have a different opinion about it. A friend of mine wrote a book called Innovation Nation, John Cal, and I think it actually I look at it differently. It gives you superpowers. So it takes a person of average capability and turns them into Superman, right? Because you can do so many different things, and if you know how to orchestrate, it's kind of like being you may be a conductor of an orchestra, but you're not the best musician on any one of the instruments, but you know how they should sound. And if you get up in the front, it's about how they play. It's not about how good they are at their particular instrument. It's how they can play together. And so, from my perspective, anyhow, I think that if you know how to harness these superpowers, you can do incredible things. You're going to have the power of 10.
So definitely that's a valid point as well. But what's going to happen is that's going to the number which you mentioned. That's going to be a very small number of people, right? The masses in general, I believe that they would be kind of struggling, because because of the over reliance. If they stop using the creativity and simply look for a quick fix, the majority of people don't kind of like to challenge, right? So what you're saying makes absolutely sense for a small number of people, for a small percentage, but majority I kind of feel is going to be a challenge. And then coming back to the empathy point,
Challenge
the
because of what? You're saying they're going to rely on it. So I'm trying to figure. I want to.
over rely on it. So essentially, to do each and everything, right? I'm starting seeing people that earlier, our generation, we used to do Google everything. Now
Well,
people are
here,
using
I mean,
Chat GPT for that.
okay. So I'm going to paint Harsh's world for you, and you tell me what you think. You're a smart guy, Harsh. But I mean,
Mhm.
think about it. You got 300,000 items in your personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You have more information, Harsh, in your own personal cloud, the entire web in 1996. The challenge is
Exactly.
Harsh's world is following the same trajectory. By that, I mean doubling every year. In 5 years with the Internet of Things, you're going to have 10 million items. I mean, how many times in the last 2 weeks has somebody, hey, Harsh, I sent you a message. Where did you get it? Where did you send it? Did you send it to my Facebook or LinkedIn or one of my 7 email addresses or WhatsApp? Let me check. I don't remember where I sent it. Let me check. I can't find it. Will you send it again? How many times does that happen? I'm not asking for an answer. But the infobesity problem, information overload, doesn't matter if you're I talked to the head of the quantum lab at Harvard, Prania, same problem. Each one of us has to deal with this challenge. And unless we have these superpowers, there's going to be, unfortunately, if we don't democratize the opportunity, in my opinion, you're going to have two sets of people: the people know data that are making a lot of money, and people that don't know it that are poor. It's going to go really fast this way, in my opinion. So if we don't democratize it, nothing good's going to happen. Nothing good. And so,
No, I,
if, we got to help reach out across the aisle. How can these tools be available for everybody? We all have a problem with email. Isn't it funny that nobody solved it, right? You got 8.1 billion people on the planet, and there's no solution to the email infobesity problem, right? And infobesity in a personal cloud, none.
true. I kind of face that myself. I have like 7 email addresses. As you point, I have six of them to be honest. So
Well,
when
that's what
someone
I
sends me
said.
an
We
email,
have
you
just
need to
five.
ask them.
And I had something. So in one of my email addresses, I didn't check it for a while, and I went in and it said, you have money that's unclaimed that's in the state of Pennsylvania from a checking account that you had, and if I wouldn't have checked it, I would have lost the money. It's
Crazy.
unclaimed, seriously. And I went in there and I thought, oh my god, this is crazy. This is my money, and I would have if I just did it by it was on an AOL account. I just went in by chance and looked in there. I thought this is pretty funny, and I found old pictures I had, a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have in there because at the time you didn't think about, hey, listen, sending uh, pictures or passports or all that kind of stuff. You would send them anywhere because you didn't think about crooks being out there and trying to grab it, right? Of course, I cleaned it off, but those are the challenges we have. And the other thing, I don't know about you, but we've got these digital treasures that we forget we have. Maybe the last picture of your grandmother, and you happen to have it digitally on your in your email, and you lose it. And so, how many of those do we have, right? That are out there. So imagine if you took unstructured data and used these incredible tools to be able to help you categorize and find this stuff, so you know where it is.
So I think you kind of hit the nerve on the head, right? The biggest challenge which we are facing today's day and age is how do we organize this vast sums of data, this vast sums that we have, right? With all the multiple storage files that we have some on this cloud, some on that cloud, this hard disk, that hard disk, right? Figuring that out and combining that with empathy. The reason why empathy also becomes important, as you mentioned, that if it is simply rational, it won't connect with us, and because we are highly rational beings. But the problem is empathy changes. Even the essence of empathy changes every 5 years, every 10 years, right? So what used to be
Empathy
empathy,
changes from what standpoint?
so in terms of just like the attitudes, right? So I have a baby sister who's 7 years younger to me, and her the way of thinking things is very different from mine. And obviously the generational gap between our parents is anyways there.
Yeah, but
So what
empathy is a
happens
little
is,
bit different, Harsh. I think it's empathy. Let's look a little bit differently, right? Empathy means like unconditional positive regard from my perspective. I care about you no matter what. I love you no matter what. So it doesn't really change. The baseline is, I want to accept you. I'm not looking at the differences that we have, but I'm looking at the similarities, right? And that's Mother Teresa said, right? It's not about stopping war; it's about pro peace. We need to get out there and in my opinion, and look at those commonalities that we have. We need to go out and care about each other and help each other like the old days. It's like unfortunately technology's created a block between us that's kind of like a titanium wall. We're so busy on, just like now, right, on Zoom, that we don't have time to really do other things. On one side, we can connect all over the world. You're in India, here I am in Palo Alto, California. It doesn't matter. But on the other side is it's kind of nice to get in front of somebody to talk and share a piece of bread and a margarita, and talk about what's happening.
true, but sometimes even the interpretation of empathy could be different from different people, right? So, for example, some people would feel that being truthful to the other person is kindness, and one person might feel that we kind of need to polish that, say it in a mild way, or kind of hide from them so that we don't want to hurt them, right? So, technically, both are two different forms of empathy. So, how would you figure out that which form of empathy is correct? So that is what I'm talking about. The interpretations are very varied. So how do we install that? That is where the challenge lies. That's where the dilemma lies.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we got to go down through. Listen, we're coming to the top of the show. Do me a favor once we end, stay online. I want to talk to you a little bit more. But what are your closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you, Harsh?
So my closing thoughts are definitely right. You pointed out AI is definitely here to stay. It's better that people start getting on the bandwagon as soon as possible, and not get caught up by that the other point which I mentioned, where they become extremely dependent on that. Rather use AI and use that to springboard and come up with something more innovative, rather than simply use it for getting that mundane task done. So using that is extremely vital. And think about GTM very actively for their businesses, especially early stage startups, because VC funding is there, it's available in abundance. It's the question of getting the right distribution and GTM in place. Once that is there, there won't be any dearth of VC money. I personally am working with a few companies right now with $10 million revenues, and we're trying to help them get to $30 million of revenue by the end of the next year, right? So that kind of stuff, if you start implementing GTM properly, that should definitely work out. And really grateful for this opportunity. Happy to speak to you again, Gary. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm extremely active over there. I reply within 24 hours. So if anyone needs help over there, happy to connect.
Thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thanks to everyone for joining GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. My name is Gary Fowler and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Harsh.